Hey, Shalini, we can hear you.
Okay,
Abhishek
great. I think Harsha is having some problem, is it?
looks like.
How are you doing? We met last in that CSR box forum, right?
Yeah, we keep meeting only in the forums.
These days, frankly, meeting anybody in person is not an option at all, as you know. But how is life? How
Life,
are things at work?
life is good. I could travel few places. So
You
um,
could? Oh,
yeah.
where?
I went to my native Patna.
Okay, okay. Oh, nice.
You're in Bombay, Shalini?
Yeah, in Bombay. Bombay is pretty. It's not as easy to travel right now. It's a little bit of a issue.
We are live on Facebook, and it's a pleasure to have you all with us today. We are discussing on something which is very eminent and very prominent, and because of which a lot of things are happening across the globe. We are discussing on the topic of climate change and environment management. And today we have esteemed panelists such as Shalini Singh. She's the Chief Corporate Communication Sustainability Head at Tata Power. We have Rishikesh Mahadev, who's the Technical Advisor to GIZ, and Mr. Abhishek Ranjan, who's the Director Sustainability Group, Brillo, a Bain Capital company. Welcome to all of you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Climate change and environment management is a very vast topic. What are your focus areas in the journey that you have traveled in climate change? So
So, do you want?
I'll
Okay,
pose this question to all of you all. So that'll be like opening.
sure. So let me take that first, Harsha. Uh, Tata Power's sustainability journey has been motivated by our visionary leader, Mr. Jamshedji, who had set up Tata Power actually to provide clean and green power to Mumbai, and that has remained our core, and sustainability is part of our DNA. And we are one of the few companies which are aligned to the United Nations sustainability goals. And it's been a 3-year journey. We've also pledged to be carbon neutral by 2050. Again, one of the few utilities uh, from Asia Pac who has put out the intentions on carbon commitment. Uh, our SDG alignment, the sustainability goal alignment, uh, has a clear prioritization of business SDGs as well as CSR based SDGs. And in business based SDGs, what takes precedent is SDGs, 7, which is affordable and clean power, and SDG 13, which is climate action. And therefore, the important aspect where Tata Power wants to make a difference is on SDG 13 through decarbonization and circular economy initiatives. So, our decarbonization efforts range from not just educating consumers and public at large on conserving energy and resources, but it also talks about how we responsibly consume and how do we also look at helping customers go green through renewable offerings like solar rooftop, solar microgrids for rural consumers, and also help the country to increase its renewable portfolio and bring down its coal dependence. So that's what we aim to do at Tata Power in our sustainability journey.
Excellent. Abhishek, would you also share something that you all have been working upon?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Harsha, first of all, inviting me and to represent my company. So, so we're a technology services company, and I was just looking at my forecast yesterday for this year in terms of our carbon emissions and carbon disclosure. Um, I was amused that how much carbon reductions we have done without doing anything this year because of COVID, and it's a phenomenon, right? We are like moving from almost 2.2 ton, per 2 COT per employee to almost like the range of zero point 0.4 ton, carbon TCO2 per employee in the just in the 1 year of COVID times, right? Well, that is COVID has helped us to kind of reduce our carbon emissions, but I think in general, we follow a lot of international principles and guidelines, especially with the Global Compact networks. We also comply to the CDP, the Carbon Disclosure Project, and we also follow the GRI principles and all. So that has been our guiding principle. Uh, we are a technology services company. Largely, our material is human resource, and because of our employee movement, travel, our carbon emissions are pretty high because of the travel part. But if you look at, from 2018 to 19, I'm not giving 2020 data, but 2019 pre-COVID, even while we're growing our offices and, while we're growing in terms of employee headcounts, etc., we actually reduced our, energy consumption by over 14%. And that's like a decrease what we have seen over the years. Every year we have been able to do that, right? So that's a measures we have taken in offices in terms of how do we use our data centers, how do we use our air conditioning, how we sensitize our employees, right? So the one thing which we want to add this year, and we are working on it, is that how does this carbon saving is actually can be calculated in terms of dollar value or rupee value. Because one thing which I've realized over the years that the numbers speaks a lot, and especially when you show them your leadership and your employees that, hey, this is the kind of savings you do. Because if I'm talking about 13% energy reduction, it's not just about you consuming less power, but it's also about how much savings you did. So I think that's the kind of metrics we are doing it. Some of our employees recently have developed a carbon calculator, and we are trying to put this in a public domain where anybody, any company who wants to calculate carbon footprint for their company, they just need to enter their data and they can actually calculate per employee, per offices, and between the three scopes what we have. So there's a lot of employee engagement also happening in this space. So it's a very, very serious affair for us, and we continue to strive for it. And we are looking at next 10-year horizon to become a carbon neutral company. So by 2030 is what we are aiming to be, a carbon neutral company.
Yeah. Good evening, and I'm Rishikesh, working with GIZ. GIZ is a German international corporation. It's a German development agency headquartered in Bonn and Eschborn that provides services in the field of international development cooperation. And over 60 years, GIZ has been working in India for sustainable economic, ecological, and social development. Currently, GIZ is working in more than 130 countries with the governments and mainly working towards sustainable and inclusive growth. The focus area of Indo-German cooperation is currently energy, environment preservation, and sustainable use of natural resources, and sustainable urban development. So as a part of GIZ, I have been working for last 10 years in the field of water, wastewater, specific to industries and industrial planning and climate resilient industrial planning and urban planning, as well as on the climate change adaptation component. So most of them are working in mitigation component where we talk about emissions and carbon. I work on the adaptation component where we think that where the climate has impacted, how the climate impacts the industries or the urban environment, and what measures how do we take up, or how do we cope up with these measures. So during the process, we have almost analyzed more than 400 industrial areas in the southern India, mainly Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, and also try to understand how risk they are towards climate change, and propose many measures through climate risk assessment for the individual industries as well as the industrial areas, come up with a climate resilient planning and propose adaptation measures, which of course includes some of the mitigation measures for the industries. And I thank Harsha for this opportunity, and yeah, looking forward for a fruitful discussion and learning
We are
from you
all in
all.
the we are all learning about climate change, to be very honest. We try to market about it, and people aren't much aware, and the responsibility that people want to take, they are like, okay, why do we need this right now? So that's why we thought that it is important that people give impetus to a subject like this. Abhishek, you mentioned a very interesting concept about net zero. But before we reach there, I wanted to clear up a basic fundamental that many people go wrong or go right in. What is the difference between CSR and sustainability? And many people, there is a thin line about it, and many people are have vague concepts. How does climate change adaptation, and how can companies analyze all their sustainability activities, and how do they link all these things with CSR? So how, if someone can help us with more clarity on this.
So let me go first, Harsha. So I think this conversation is a lot in India. That what's the difference between CSR and sustainability. But if you look at in the global parlance, sustainability is CSR is a very integral part of sustainability, right? What makes sustainability, right? What are the few important pillars? So you can call it either people, planet, profit, or you can call it ESG, which is economical, social, and governance. Now, social, the CSR is in the both the sustainability pillars, whether you call it people in the people, planet, profit, or social in the ESG. So so CSR is a very important part of sustainability, but sustainability is a very large agenda. It's about how companies are running their function, de-risking their function, they're de-risking their organizations, business sustainability. It's about environment sustainability and how they're reaching out to community. So this everything comes under sustainability actually. And more you will see that the companies will start talking about sustainability. So 3 years back I was having my title as a CSR head, but now you see there's a change because we felt as a company that there's a sustainability is a larger goal. Many companies are also including things like diversity, inclusion, issues which is related to so many other facets of the company. So I think sustainability is and that's why it's called sustainable development goals, right? So from there, the sustainability ideas have come. It has come like a couple of decades back from the United Nations. And what we are looking at is that companies should be measured in all the three areas: how you govern a company, how you taking care of your own employees, how you're taking care of a society in the communities where you operate and work, as well as the environment. So I think people generally feel in India that sustainability is all about environment, but actually environment is as equal as important as the CSR. So that's how I would like to put it. You are on mute, Harsha.
Shalini, would you like to throw some light?
Yeah, sure. So, just adding on to the earlier comment made uh, by the presenter, uh, the sustainability today is economic, social, and environment, all three aspects put together. And it's not just about environment, it's not just about social, alignment. It's about a good corporate citizenship arises uh, out of all these three parameters when they are balanced out by the organization. And more organizations are becoming aware of this. One very good framework which has brought all of this understanding quickly to organizations is the United Nations Sustainability Goals, where all the 17 goals can be divided in these three under these three heads. So whether it is poverty, SDG number 1, which can be dealt with from the from the CSR angle and other things, and there are hardcore business related sustainability goals which are also there. So companies today don't just focus on business goals, but they also focus on taking CSR goals. They also focus on their economic viability, because if they are not viable, then obviously they will not be attractive to. They will not be able to create shareholder value, and not be there to do all of this. And a very simple aspect of understanding the difference between sustainability and CSR is that CSR is a subset of sustainability. It is not interchangeable with sustainability. So any organization which is sustainable would also want to be a neighbor.
Okay, Rishikesh, would you have some thoughts on the same?
Yeah,
Shalini, you
basically,
broke up in the middle.
yeah, I think she
Yeah,
want to
you're on
continue.
mute. Yeah, you're on mute.
So I just want to just round off by saying that sustainability, CSR is a subset of sustainability, and it's one of the three parameters that defines sustainability: environment, social, and financial viability.
Thank you. Thank
That's
you.
all. Thank you.
Rishikesh, would you have some?
Yeah. So most of the things have already been said. So yeah, CSR, when we implement some of the activities, it has to be also sustainable in nature. What it's called as triple bottom line: the environmental, social, and and economical sustainability. And we have a lot of examples, and there are many models how to be more inclusive and how to involve the communities, and how to be more and also improve the living conditions of the communities by introducing certain measures which are more sustainable in nature. For example, if I say a beverage industry or a water intensive industry want to go and implement certain activities, a watershed management activity, they go for a integrated watershed management activity where they involve communities, improve the water condition of the watershed, where from where they are extracting the information, extracting the water, implement certain measures which are more agriculture or drip irrigation oriented, improve the education, awareness, health, sanitation, and it becomes it becomes an integrated approach where community takes the responsibility of the activity and yeah, implement, and in the long term it is sustainable in nature, so that both community as well as the industry can survive in a survive and have a win-win situation.
That's a very interesting take. Now that we know much about sustainability, there has been a lot of talks around net zero. What do you all really mean by net zero? How do you all achieve it? And what are the steps that you all are taking in your companies to achieve it, or advising?
Okay, so for the benefit of the larger audience here, net zero, right? So it's like, the carbon emissions happens through your operations of your company, and how much of them you offset, take away those emissions. That's where, if your both these parameters becomes equal, the amount of emissions versus your contribution to take away those emissions away from the environment, then you become a net zero company, right? So as of now, our emissions are higher than what the efforts to kind of neutralize it. um, so as I said, that we have a 10-year horizon from now to kind of become a net carbon neutral company. Um, So I think the first thing, if you are a starter, you have to start measuring your carbon emissions, and you have to look at the areas like some of the low hanging fruits where you can actually start making some changes, right? Things like how what's your energy consumptions are, what can you do for energy optimization. You have a lot of tools available to do that, especially if you are a very high energy consumption sector. So that's an effort we are making. The second thing is that having some restriction on the travel part, because air travel is almost in the world contributes to nearly 10% of the overall emissions, right? So that's a huge number. So that's where the IT industry, which I belong to, has a lot of emissions coming from. So we are looking at, and thanks to this COVID times where we can realize that without travel also, I think almost every work can be done, right? There nothing is stopping us from actually. People are so worry about traveling. So I think that is another measure we're looking at, that how do we make sure that that travel, it can be reduced and can be only done when this is highly essential, and we can use technology for that. There are a lot of softer measures you can do in the offices by changing, your lighting systems, your air conditioning system. I heard a company which is have fixed, their air conditioning temperature at 24-degree, irrespective of their locations, right? So some of those measures also help, and keeping a tab, keeping the numbers, measuring it and putting a target year after year, and making a responsibility amongst the different internal stakeholders. I think it's a right way of approaching for becoming a carbon neutral company. And obviously, there's the external help you can take. People are buying forest to be a carbon neutral company. They are planting trees. They're buying carbon certificates. Those are the other measures. But I think those are easier measures where you can buy things and you can offset your carbon. But I think things, what is in your control, reducing your carbon emission, going for what Shalini was talking about, the non-renewables earlier. I think adopting to those, energy consumption, I think would be a real game changer. Thank you.
Different. Shalini, what are the steps that Tata Power is taking up to become net zero?
So, Tata Power is power as an industry generates a lot of carbon. So, our carbon neutrality targets are to go carbon neutral by 2050. In order to do that, we have already taken a hard stop that we will not put up any more thermal power projects, and we will only grow through renewables. And our carbon neutrality targets uh, being carbon neutral by 2050 is in line with the international utilities. It's not just something that we are doing generally, but if you look at many other utilities in France, UK, Sweden, Denmark, and New Zealand, even they have taken a net zero target by 2050, because it's a very long journey to do away with your assets, thermal assets, move completely to your renewable assets, and also provide consumers green options to go to use to use uh, your product. And some of those green actions I mentioned earlier. But I would also like to say that uh, for many companies, when you are talking about carbon neutrality, you have to educate your own customers and your own employees to also be carbon neutral in their daily lives. Learn to be carbon neutral in their daily lives, and what it means is to be consuming resources responsibly. Now, that resource could be fuel in your kitchen. It could be your own, energy, your power bills in your house, using your equipment with lot of responsibility and not wasting power, using water responsibly, because carbon neutrality also has is there's a very strong element which people miss out when they talk about resource conservation. Water is a scarce resource in a country like India, and water positivity is going to be one of the biggest ways in which India will have to lead uh, the whole combating climate change issue. Fourth very important part is waste management and plastic, and especially plastic and e-waste as a corporate. So how are we looking at circular economy measures to be able to be responsibly generating or not generating waste, and making it circular economy and not wasting resources? That's a very, very important ask which is there for Indian companies, because we still seem to be way behind other companies. We're not even thinking about it. We're not talking about it. And therefore, that's another aspect of the entire climate change mitigation that one should look at. Fifth, and the easiest, is to plant a tree. Carbon sink to be created is far more important today, because see what has happened to the world around us, and see how the environment has benefited with this temporary shutdowns which have happened. The way emissions have come down, the way greenhouse gases have been controlled. I think it's very, very easy for organizations to start looking at how they will create proactively carbon sinks in the form of afforestations, if not in their immediate vicinity, but in some places around them. That would be also a great way of looking at this whole area of combating climate change.
Beautiful. One of I believe Infosys has announced net zero.
Yes.
Right. Yes, that's true.
So we
They
will
have.
hear the same in a decade's time from your company.
Look, for us, it's not so easy as Infosys and many other who are talking right now. But yes, what we will do in the immediate term is that we will not grow at all through thermal. It's a very, very big step.
Yes, indeed.
So,
Rishikesh, you all have been advising to many companies. What is the trend that you see, and what are the innovative steps that they take in order to achieve net zero?
Yeah, there are many steps, but first, what is carbon or net zero? It's about all about IPCC 2018 report that lays down the objective to achieve net zero carbon emissions reduction by 2050. So the target is most of the industries, everyone has to achieve the net zero carbon emission through artificial or natural sinks. And this is achieved not only like what Shalini and Abhishek said, not only through just carbon, it's also the waste management. Waste management plays a key role, and also it's a sustainability, and it incorporates into the circular economy background. A lot of startups are coming up on the plastic credits. So the plastic value chain on similar lines of carbon credits, plastic credits are coming up. The extended producer responsibility, where major corporates are trying to take back the raw material which has been into the value chain and coming back into the industry. And this net zero can be broadly categorized into within the industry and processes and outside the industry. So when you look at within industry, the renewables, energy efficiencies are the first and the lowest low-hanging fruits that can be achieved by the industry, whether it's large-scale corporates or even MSME. MSME forms almost 95% of Indian, more than 95% actually. So Indian industries. So basically, MSME would be a key role addressing the net zero carbon emission. So the low-hanging fruits, simple efficiency measures like improving the compressed air, plugging the leakage in the compressed air, improving the insulation has actually reduced or conserved lot of energy, say up to 4,000 kilowatt hours of energy per year. So in that way, we are able to save a lot of energy for the within the industry. When it comes to outside energy through CSR activities, through achieving some of the SDGs, which directly addresses both water and carbon, say waste management, waste itself contributes around 6% of carbon emissions throughout the world. So when through CSR, you can actually convert this waste into useful resources and link with the sustainability income generation and other things. And power is one more sector, which is almost 27-28% of carbon emissions. And here the industry can look from within the industry, that's again energy efficiency, and from where the energy is sourced. So if it is sourced through thermal power plants, slowly and gradually they can replace with renewables, renewables through storage or through off-grid, on-grid solutions are available. And again, during in the value chain, from where the raw material is coming or from where to where the processed goods are being sold. So in these value chains also, companies can try to slowly and gradually look into the value chain, improving the reducing the carbon emissions. So there are various solutions to it's per industry based solution we provide. We work with the closely with the industry processes and yeah, solutions.
Yeah, it will be great to see a booklet on what are the different ways to achieve net zero. You see, that'll be a great learning for anybody who's beginning.
Yeah, net zero is a recent concept, but yeah, we have worked on paper and pulp industries, textile industries. It's all case examples are available in the GIZ website. Yeah, I can share.
Excellent.
We work with the MSME sector, so yeah,
We
so
would
it's a
definitely,
mixed sector.
yeah, we would definitely be interested to learn more about it when we visit GIZ. Now, Shalini, you mentioned a very pertinent point that in India, we are not even talking much about the circular economy or waste management and things on those lines. So after the Paris Climate Pact that India has signed, where is India standing now, and how far are we to achieve the goals that we committed to?
So, under the Paris Agreement 2015, we committed to lower our emissions, the intensity by 35%, if I remember correctly, and that too, uh, uh, that again we said by 2030, because we took we still are 10 years, uh, 10 years to do that. So we've also adopted the NDC targets, which are considered to be compatible with the two degree uh, indicating the climate commitment, and that's again 2030. So from the potential point of view, India, because of solar power and many other, uh, I would say largely because of solar power uh, present here, we can take a much aggressive target if we wish to. And as you know, the Paris Agreement is largely on all about carbon, uh, uh, you know, uh, carbon and the greenhouse gases emissions. So, however, if we see in the short term, COVID has helped us. The kind of lockdown that we've had, the pandemic has actually made the GSG levels are pretty down, and so is the case with some industries have been uh, not been operational. So there has been an immediate relief, but the larger point is that India has not taken any targets of carbon neutrality, unlike many other countries which have come forward and taken targets. So as a country, there is no carbon neutrality target. And that is one thing which is missing, because just now China has taken a target of carbon neutrality by 2060, if I'm not wrong. And China is supposed to be behind the curve. But we as a country are only still talking about carbon intensity reduction of almost close to 35%. And and I felt, since I'm part of many international discussions, I was part of the World Climate Foundation, where they asked me a similar question on, where India is, and I felt that we are a little behind on our carbon neutrality targets, and we should find a way of announcing that soon, so that we are aligned to all the European and the other utilities or other countries who are way ahead, especially Scandinavian countries, and especially European countries put together. So yes, India does need a carbon neutrality target to be taken soon.
what would be the policy changes that we should be introducing in India in order to achieve those in different sectors or in totality? Any thoughts on that?
See, yeah. See, it's slightly more complicated than because as a sector we are a big source of manufacturing. We're a manufacturing base, but as a country, when you take a certain target uh, uh, of neutrality, companies start to align, and therefore, when we took a 35% reduction targets, we saw many of the companies uh, coming forward and doing that, and regulations can very easily take care of it. So it's not an issue. Now the issue is, which perhaps we touched upon in this discussion, when you have countries like China, when you have countries Europe who are way ahead of the curve, taking those targets, the investors who are looking at investing in India look at India as being behind the curve. Entire discussions around ESG investing or impact investment will lose out as a country. And therefore, as a country, we should be taking care of this aspect. It's quite important.
Abhishek, Rishikesh, would you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah.
Uh,
So I think if you look at some data points, right? So in 2017, if you look at data, the global average per capita carbon emissions in the tons, right? So the global average is 4.37. And India, if you look at that way, I'm purely in the number perspective because we are a large populated country. So obviously, if you look at the number of people and the emissions, it always will be at the favor of India. So India is a 1.61 tons, carbon, emissions, which is compared to 4.37, which is a global number. Now, India has done fairly well at some of the points which Shalini was mentioning in terms of renewables. So actually, we almost have met the target of, our electric power, installed capacity from the non-fossil fuel. So we are almost at 38, 39%. Our target is nearly 40%. If you look at in terms of emissions target, so we have committed to reduce our emissions of our GDP by 33 to 35% by 2030 from the 2005 levels. Uh, how is the progress? We have almost reached 21%, and we are almost at the, going to be in the range of 35 to 50% by end of 2030 if you look at the current projections. A lot of this has done by the commitment of a prime minister on the solar. You know that India is a lead country in the solar alliance along with, I think, France, right? There are a couple of other areas where we have not progressed is in terms of the forest cover. That's one area I think we need to catch up very fast with countries like China or, some of the other, European countries, etc. But I think on the non-renewables, I think India is in the leading pack.
If you have something to say.
yeah, I would like to, I think Abhishek has covered most of the things. So I would like to focus on the circular economy. I think GIZ has closely worked under EU with EU and Niti Aayog. They have started with some of the sectors on circular economy like iron, steel and aluminum sector, which is at a larger level. At the state level, Telangana state is coming up with a strategy document for circular economy, addressing some of the key waste like plastic, then sand, waste, and it's a state strategy. And even Orissa and Goa are also coming up with some of the state strategies. So slowly, circular economy is being introduced into the policy level strategy documents, and slowly it will come up as a policy document in near future. So that's something, it's in a going in right direction, but still we have a long way to go. Yeah.
Excellent. Abhishek, you're full with numbers, and Rishikesh, you're full with the policy documents. So wonderful to hear that. Now, considering our way forward, there is something known as responsible investment, which is presently linked with climate change to a very large extent. In fact, the UN Principles of Responsible Investment, UNPRI, has also set up a task force for climate related financial disclosure. According to you, what is the role of the private sector in the adaptation, and do you think the investors in India and abroad have started asking for the same?
So, who wants to go first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Shalini. Okay. I
So hi. No, you will have to you'll have to repeat the last part because I could not hear you clearly,
Okay,
Harsha.
I'll repeat my question. Considering that investors are playing a key role, and UNPRI has introduced a task force for climate-related financial disclosure, what is the
Yeah.
role of the private sector in its adaptation? And do you think the investors are really asking you, what is your experience?
So it's a very task by the investors who want to invest in companies which are able to take care of climate change issues, and uh, and therefore there are many companies which have not waited for this to happen. So, for example, many of us have been participating in Dow Jones Index. We have been doing our CDM and other disclosures for a very long time. I think for companies which have not started doing this in India, and there are quite a few in the SME segment which will have issues because they may have investors or partners who would want them to go through that exercise. And yes, let me answer your question that investors have started asking for MSCI ratings, ESG ratings. They've they have talked about many of that aspects now, and almost as a condition to do this. And companies like us, companies like us, we are already doing disclosures, MSCI, and we are also looking up at science-based targets to understand how companies like us can define our pathway to future-proof this growth. And also contribute to the entire climate change agenda. So most Indian companies will have to go that route because it's becoming an ask. Many who are ahead of the curve because they saw this coming close to 10 years, especially companies Harsha. So when you go global and you have global investors, you would not wait until now to do these things.
Yeah, great. Abhishek, what are your thoughts on this? Abhishek.
Yeah. So I think, sustainability CSR leaders, like, couple of us on this call would understand that how sustainability departments or the function is now very integrated to the business, right? So I have a like a dotted line to reporting to the board of directors, so is the CSR, right? So the kind of business decisions are today made in the company. um, it's a lot of financial decisions in terms of investors, is has with the customers. So if you look at, most of our customers are not in India, they are in Europe, they're in US. And today the kind of questions they ask for ESG is phenomenal, right? Especially in the COVID times about the employee health and safety, issues. I'm seeing there's a surge of questions coming on the employee health and safety in these times. So I think financial, risk pertaining to the sustainability is a very big on the agenda of investors, customers, and a lot of other stakeholders, and that will continue to be there. Now, if you ask me, what are the things they follow, right? So you have a lot of this global, you have talked about TFCD. we have GRI. I have seen Microsoft, asking all the suppliers to comply with with CDP. And actually, we talked about the supply chain is one of the biggest driver for sustainability and carbon neutrality. So when Microsoft decided to be a carbon neutral, they asked every single supplier to be a carbon neutral and be one of the best suppliers for Microsoft. We are now complying to that. So I think the supply chain is a lot of this is driving the sustainability for the company, especially the companies who operate in a global scenario, right? So I think this is very, very important. We have examples from BlackRock, where they have asked all their invested companies, where they have asked for their ESG report. If you want to be a CFA in the US now, you have to qualify in ESG exams, right? And look at the business schools how they're teaching ESG now, and that's what, Harsha, you are driving some of these initiatives through your efforts, right? This wasn't the case 5 years back or 7 years back. So you will see a more and more ESG getting prominence. The chief sustainability officers will be a very, very integral part of the business decision making in the coming future, and that's how I see this taking a prominence.
Yeah, from the MSME perspective, the insurance agencies ask for what measures they have taken. And with working with Vishakhapatnam MSME sectors and Hyderabad immediately after the cyclone in 2014, a lot of insurance companies have raised the premiums, and and many MSME sectors have to also suffer from that. So we have carried out a complete climate risk assessment for some of the selected industries, where we try to address what are the climate hazards that, based on the location, what are the climate hazards the industry may face, and what are the key parameters or key components within industry and surroundings that may affect. So starting from the physical infrastructure, the building, the industrial shed, because the 2014 cyclone has completely blown away most of the 90% of the industrial sheds, and many industries have come very strongly back. So how the business or building infrastructures will get affected? What are the processes will get affected? Within these are all very small micro industries. Say a small rubber industry will have an oven, and this say Vizag or any coastal India will have high humidity during summers. So this have an impact on the workers efficiency and all those components. Similarly, how the value chain is getting affected, and storage and logistics also getting affected. So considering all these things, they are coming up with a resilience measure or adaptation measure, which enabling industries to cope up with these climatic hazards. And insurance industries are definitely looking at these aspects, at least from the MSME sectors. But also the private investors are also taking care. But at the public level, yeah. So the big companies are looking for this climate risk disclosures measures.
Wonderful. So that's like a lot of information in one go. Now, my next question is, what are your best case studies in the space that you have worked with, or the projects that you all are presently working on, and what are your best learnings? I would club this up because of the paucity of time with one more question is, IICSR is an institute. What kind of persons do you foresee that the future sustainability and CSR leaders should learn in your industry and otherwise? Abhishek, would you like to go with?
Sure. So I think institutes like IACSR, or there are multiple other institutes, have a lot of role to play, right? If you look at today, the sustainability sector, I came to this sector just by, I don't know how it happened, but it happened. I was a marketing professional, but then I got a chance to move into it. Now, the way the business schools are now teaching, and many of the business schools have started either as an elective or at least half a credit or one credit course, which I also teach in few business schools, has really a good sense of give them ideas of what's happening. What I see is that the sustainability and CSR functions will not really the new skills what they need is not going to come only from the traditional courses, right? You need people who have understanding of data science, who understand what a data insight means, because data plays a lot of role in our work. People who are very good at communications, people who can manage, people, motivate them. So motivators, communications, right? And today, while we always talk about India, I think the way we work on sustainability, especially companies like us, which is very global, we sometimes don't get exposed our students in some of the courses where I have taught to what happening outside the world, because by the time probably we adopt, it's quite late. So getting the sense that how some of the global practices are happening, because sustainability in US, Europe, and Asia, you will see a lot of variance, right? So bringing that international flavor, because your institute name itself says in international something, right? So I think that is very important, right? Now, ESG is such a large piece, right? You cannot have one person doing everything at the one go, but having some courses which will enable them with the basics of the ESG, right? How which are the areas which is going to grow? Definitely, renewables is going to grow. Area where which you see a lot of change going to happen is actually on your vehicles, the consumer vehicles, right? Where you'll see the non-fossil fuel cars are going to grow. So those are the areas where we need a lot of people with different skills. A lot of career opportunities also going to be happen. So that will be my advice to you.
Best case study or
Yeah, so
project close to your
yeah,
heart?
yeah, the case study. Yeah, there are so many case studies. So I think I will take a very small thing which has worked for us. So I think you also put in the chat box this year, chat box now. So this year, what we have done, we have asked our employees to calculate their personal carbon emission, and we asked them that you take a pledge minimum of 10% at the bare minimum. And this is a UN, climate action, carbon calculator, which is we are using it. And we have asked all our employees, and what we are seeing is that there's sudden interest in employees to kind of commit, measure, and then act on it, and then report at the end of the year. So I think that's had really created a kind of a very healthy competition in the organization, where people, each individuals, are now taking a call on the climate action. So that has been really successful. Yeah.
Shalini, you have something.
Yeah, hi. So, Tata Power has a whole SDG compendium where almost close to 200 case studies of what we are doing right in the organization and which is beyond compliance is there, and it's available on its website. But let me talk about a few of them, which we are very proud of. And one of them is a 12-year-old initiative called Tata Power Club Energy, which is also an Edison Award winner and winner of various global awards. It's a case study in IIM Ahmedabad. I have done TED Talk on it. This is a club which is run in 533 schools in the country and helps children, you know, uh, be the brand ambassador to conserve energy in their own families and spread the message. And it's a measurable way of measuring your carbon footprint, and a considerable amount of savings in both electricity and also carbon reduction has been done by this club, which is globally recognized. Another initiative, which was our answer to leading by example, was Granulution, which is an internal program that we run. Granulution is all about our employees doing green activities and reducing their own personal carbon footprint. This is again a case study in IIM Ahmedabad, since we were one of the first few. It happened. We started this immediately after we started Club Energy 11 years ago. And we believe that we can't tell our customers to save or children to save power if our own employees are not doing it. And both these programs are very well embedded and very well, now institutionalized, and running very smoothly. And we are very happy to say that we're doing it sustainably, and we are doing it year on year. And we continue to see how we have also brought in employees and their families and customers into the whole debate. What could you do, as new courses by your institution? So I have two thoughts. I think that the whole world is aligning and coming together globally on the sustainability agenda. So it would be very important for your students to understand and to have a framework of United Nations SDG goals understood before they come out of the institute. And that's something which is missing in the curriculum, because I just I'm a visiting fact. I just had a, uh visiting faculty discussion, speaker session of an hour and a half in SPJN, which is one of the most evolved institution when it comes to sustainability and CSR. And it's not even there in their framework, and they are looking at it differently. They're putting up a sustainability committee on that. You are a sustainability institution, so your students should have all the global frameworks well understood and well, uh, and also well, I would say, institutionalized. The second thing that you must keep a line of sight on is impact investing, and how investors are viewing the entire space from the point of view of disclosures and also reporting. So right from the understanding of and pardon my ignorance if you already cover this, but the ratings and what they imply in the journey of a company is very important to understand. So whether it is S&P's rating of Dow Jones Index, whether it is MSCI rating, whether it is CDP disclosure on water. Now, so far there was carbon disclosure on CDP. Now the investors are pushing companies. They've understood the importance of water in economies, and they're pushing companies to do CDP disclosure on water. So how many companies in India or in Asia Pac are prepared for it, know it, or will be able to measure it is a very, very important ask. And if tomorrow your students are going to be part of those organizations, then they should be able to help organizations do that. So I think these two would be very, very useful cases for you.
Rishikesh, thank you. When I'm rolling out these courses, I'm definitely gonna give you guys a call.
Sure, sure. Happy to help.
Yeah, GIZ is basically a lot of do capacity, and there are many documents, manuals available in the net on climate change adaptation and mitigation, and there are many courses. But one course what I personally would maybe request you to include is the how to do the climate risk assessment of a industry. So for industry itself, whether it's a SME or it's any MSME or big corporates, they should know how to assess the risk, climate risk assessment. And it's a comprehensive methodology that has been developed, and it's already available in the net. So that course will enable the industry to assess the risk, take measures to cope up with, prioritize it, and also include it in the whatever disclosure schemes they have. So that's something which is a quite important component of the training programs.
Excellent. Any case study that you foresee which will be really helpful, or which you would like?
There are many case studies like small investment, big response, but I would like to shift towards adaptation case study. There is one food processing industry in Visakhapatnam, which was highly effective. It is a medium scale industry. So they prepare wheat flour. So they affected due to climate, cyclones, and almost the storage as well as the industrial sheds were destroyed. So this they have to maintain a very high standard of food quality, and any increase in the moisture content will attract microorganisms and insects. So they imported vertical silos, which maintains the temperature within the storage, keep it dry because it's a humid area, keep it dry, and also it can withstand 250 kilometer per hour wind speed. So any future change or any future climate or if cyclones with 250 kilometer per hour, it can withstand. By the way, the 2014 cyclone was 219 kilometers per hour. It hit the Vishakhapatnam. So that has actually changed the way Vishakhapatnam looks. Many industries have cope up with this cyclone, and in future they will be able to manage it.
Wonderful. On this, no, it's very informative. I'm sure that this would be implemented in many other parts of the world as well. On this note, may I request if there are any questions? I would also like to inform Shalini. So we have Dr. Upadhyay who's taking up the course on SDG ratings and benchmarking towards the end of December with us. And we would be rolling out a short-term course on that. Dr. Upadhyay, over to you.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So nice.
Okay, Dr. Upadhyay, do you have a question? Or we have Dr. Michael Hopkins also today with us, and he's joining us all the way from Geneva, and he has a lot of comments that he's put in the chat box, and I'm sure he would like to talk about them too.
Hi, Harsha. Hi, Dr. Upadhyay. I see your background is you've stolen one from me again. It looks environmentally superb.
Yes.
I made some comments on the chat box after listening to the other speakers' very clear expositions. The expositions were good when you're talking about real things, case studies, what are you doing, and so on. But always really, unfortunately, bad when we talk about concepts. What do we mean by these concepts? And what do we mean by CSR? What do we mean by sustainability? And so on. I'm not going to go through all that right now, because as Harsha knows, she's listened to me drone on for hours and hours on these topics. So I don't want to inflict that on you. But if you look on the chat, I put in some references there that I hope would help. I should also add the fact that I put in some references doesn't mean to say I know. All of us are still grappling in this space on what we're trying to do, how we can help. I think one conclusion on the environmental issues is that many people are saying that the next pandemic is actually climate change, which is going to be as powerful in its impact, and perhaps even more than what we're seeing now. In many ways, the COVID is a pretty horrible thing, but the percentages are kind of small compared to what we've seen with climate change, which can devastate whole countries. And that thing, so I think this discussion that you're embarking on is very, very important. And it always strikes me as being, what can we do about it? It's always so little. Yes, we talk about it and we try and do things, planting trees. I mean, even that awful person who might even get reelected is talking about planting 1 million trees. He's actually not doing that. He's just talking about it. I don't know, somebody probably told him over a cup of coffee one day and that's all he remembered. So I'm sorry if I sound a bit bitter today after the election news that are coming from the United States. I must say that my heart is in my shoes today. I'm so angry, disappointed that a whole country could go in such a ridiculous direction as a leader of the world in terms of democracy, including part of the Paris Conference on climate change and so on and so forth. And so this is a pretty bad day for the whole world, not just for the United States. And I've actually been in contact with my sister all night who lives in Wisconsin. But anyway, we're not here to talk about politics. But unfortunately, politics are dominating the debates on all the things that you lovely people have been discussing. So I'm not going to ask a question, but just as a statement, have a look at some of the things that I've written on SDGs and on definitions, including on sustainability, which a lot of us have been struggling with for some time. Probably the best text on sustainability was the Gro Brundtland reports, Caring for the Future, written actually in the mid-90s. It so happens that in about an hour's time, I'm having dinner with one of the main authors of that reports. But I know we're going to be talking about this awful election in the United States. But I know Ash has already given
Dr.
all time and she wanted to, and I'm going to cut myself short, Harsha. I know you, and it was lovely meeting you. And all.
We are an extremely neutral platform. We believe in Trump as much as we believe in Biden. And we believe in all the political parties, whoever are supporting climate change and CSR and sustainability. Good. We have a question from Mr. Manoj Kumar over here. Sir, would you like to switch on your video and your mic and please address the panelists?
Yeah, thanks, Harsha. See, very nice topic you people are talking about today. And I remember we used to, Abhishek is my very old friend. We were in Rotaract, and that time around 10, 15 years back also, we used to talk about environment. So yeah, one thing I would like to appreciate that Brilio is doing a great job in this net zero, because even Mahatma used to tell that if suppose that you want some good changes in society, you should start from your home. And that's what Abhishek was telling, that they have already taken major step for a net zero company by 2030. So what I think, all these means CSR association or big organization or such related organization can draft a guideline kind of thing to means achieve a net zero by 20, 30, 40, 50 whatsoever, and propose this to government that, sir, please means make it as a law for the organization, whichever small organization or big organization, make it as a law for organization, and those who violate this, some strict punishment should there, and this should also be a part of ISO certification. Not only just a simple law, it should be also part of ISO certification. So can such thing can be done or not? Is it doable? I think.
May I request one of the panelists to please take up the question?
So, before I take this question, there was something I was reading about what Michael was writing about, and I always, agree to disagree with him many times, but but that's how the conversation with him always like been. So my only 2 points to his opinion about CSR versus sustainability, right? So CSR is no doubt is the out of all the terminologies we are using is the most historical. It's like been there for hundred years plus. Why the sustainability has happened over the years is because earlier there was no environmental concerns. I think after the industrial revolution only, we have seen that the climate change has been affected by industries, by the private sector. So you will always see that that there is an evolving path, that today, yesterday it was only society, today is environment, and then then whole governance piece, that how do you so it's not about how do you, what you do for community or the environment, but also how do you run the business, right? Like how do you raise your capital, how do you create a product, how do you do a responsible marketing, responsible financing, right? How do you do ethical sourcing? So there's a lot of elements have been added over the years, and that have made sustainability, because the society felt that only doing a social community work is not enough for the company. They need to be growing up and being a responsible citizen, responsible business. So that was one of my points, Michael, on your comments about CSR on sustainability. Coming to Manoj's point, I think compliances. In India we say danda rule, or like putting some those kind of is we have friends like Rishikesh, friends like other consultants who are very Mr. Upadhyay ji, right, who knows how to kind of meet these guidelines and compliances. But if your heart is not there, if you are not willing to do it, there is a lot of conversation is happening in the US that people are offsetting carbon by just buying forest. Now, is it like you consume a lot of energy at your office? You do a lot of things at the office and not be energy consumption, and just since you have a money, you buy a forest and offset it, right? So those are the questions we need to answer. So I think compliance, in a way, it's good like CSR compliance, but we should also look at how do we encourage people, how do we incentivize corporates like who are good at it, right? Do you give it some tax savings? Do you give some extra benefits to them, right? So those are the other things. It'll be always a situation of somewhere between the stick and carrot, right?
Yeah,
True,
thanks.
actually.
Yeah, you're very right.
Yeah, one thing, Bhutan has achieved a carbon positive or carbon negative, whatever you call. It is basically has become a carbon sink country. So that's the only country in the world that actually is a carbon sink country. So if Bhutan can achieve, if we divide India into thousands of Bhutan and try to achieve, although because of the terrain and because of the various aspects, Bhutan has achieved it. Yeah, if Bhutan can achieve, I think many other countries can achieve it. And regarding compliance, it's not just CSR or net positive, also many environmental issues are also there. Yeah, it has to be both, as Mr. Abhishek said, it's both stick and carrot method has to be implemented, because industry has to grow. At the same time, environment also has to be taken care.
Just one line I want to add here, Rishikesh and Harsha. See, this in the carbon neutrality, are we talking about neutrality for that 1 year? Or we are talking about all these years of your operations, right? That has to be understood. So I really applaud Microsoft, and I keep taking their name because they are really championing it. They have committed that they will do carbon offset for all those years since they have been the operation. So some companies, I won't say which companies, but some companies may take this stand that, okay, for 2021, I'll become carbon neutral. But what happened in the last 30 years or 100 years of your operations? So that is also we need to look at that. Already you have done so much of damage. And if we don't control the climate, change, if our temperature goes another 2% high, then probably this earth will not be livable. So that is the control we need to do. So some companies who have already done a lot of carbon emission, they have to do extra measure to offset even the past year's emissions.
Harsha, you have to unmute.
I think Harsha's must have gone offline.
Yeah.
We don't hear it because I think what Abhishek just said was very accurate, and you're waiting for a response. I think, in fact, you could respond to your own question because you know so much about it. I'm just stepping in as Harsh is not here,
Yes.
but Dr. Upadhyay, you have something to say. And it's always very useful. Please,
Thank you, Michael. It was a pleasure listening to you. And I think we should carry on this debate about CSR, sustainability, environment, and various compliance. Of late, there has been a debate about a lot of things. Should government do or should government not do it? I think we can take it at some point of time in context of all these issues. And since it's 6:19, and I think, Michael, we should end it now.
I think probably we should. I noticed that the conversation has been going on for more than an hour, but you've just opened a new point of discussion. Should this be government or industry or who? In fact, it's pretty obvious. It should be all of us. So that's.
Yes, all of
So
us.
I think perhaps maybe we should leave it there. I don't know if anybody would like to make a last comment. I did enjoy listening to you all, actually. I can't say I agree with you all, but then it wouldn't be fun, would it? So,
Yeah, so I think the one point which I want to make here, I think, which
Please.
Rishikesh has brought in, right? A very, very pertaining point is about the MSMEs. See, today you can, or we can regulate, we can control, the big corporates, the BSE top 500 companies. But a lot of climate change can be controlled through educating the MSMEs, especially in the water bodies pollutions, what we see in the country like India, right? We're still not able to clean, our, rivers, right? Some of our famous rivers are still so polluted. And a lot of the responsibility lies on the MSMEs. So I think what Rishikesh was advising, I think that's a very, very pertinent point. We need all of us to brainstorm and take it further.
I totally agree with you. So, any last message, final comments to all of us, all the viewers who are right now with us?
Yeah, I can start maybe. Maybe just simple things. Everyone should contribute, whether it's industry or individual. Try to, if it's industry, try to ensure that it's sustainable in terms of economics, environment, and socially sustainable. And and try to address the 17 SDGs, which is quite uh, and uh, and also everyone can contribute from our home. We can do waste management, we can do small renewables, we can resource conservation, we can do circular economy, everything we can do from the home itself. So start from home.
Thank you so much, Rishikesh. Abhishek, would you have some last thoughts?
Yeah, so I think, Harsha, this has been really, really something very, very useful conversation. Many, very, very, little times in the panel discussions, we learn a lot. And I think this was one of those learning conversations. So thanks to you, being you yourself being educated. I think you really put us some tough questions, and you made us think, realize, and even if you missed one question, like I missed the question about the best practices or the case study, you make sure that your students as the panelists don't miss a single question. So that was really nice of you to do that. So really appreciate. My only one suggestion and request would be to have participants in the Zoom call itself so that they can ask more questions, and we see them, which is not in the Facebook live. Otherwise, I really enjoyed this panel.
Sure, wonderful. I think Shalini is facing network challenges. But it has been wonderful to have you all, and I'm sure that with the conversation that we have begun, there is a very long way for all of us to go, and we don't have the same conversation after a decade. We have more evolved conversation after a decade when I will be asking you maybe more questions and you will be having some more answers and something more improved for all of us to work upon. I'd like to thank Dr. Hopkins, Dr. Upadhyay, Mr. Manoj Kumar, Rohan to join in, and special thanks to Abhishek, Rishikesh, Shalini for making this happen. Appreciate.
Thank you for the talk.
Thank you.
Learned a lot. Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.